Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. So, I just a few hours ago, maybe 4 hours ago at this point, I watched the final episode of the Santa Clauses 2, episode 6, and I've watched episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, which gives a total run of 12 episodes at this point. Yeah, 12. Yeah, 12. 12 episodes. Now, this season was interesting. It's still a really good episode. This season is more interesting, but a really good season, okay? This episode was good, but interesting at the same time, because we got to see some of the things that happened a little bit during or right after Scott Calvin took that what was it, kayak out of the bag, out of his Santa sack. That just sounded terrible. Remember that scene where he's like struggling to put the kayak down and the tree falls over? Well, that moment was the moment that we see little Gabriel Iglesias' character, aka Fluffy, his character, see Santa Claus, aka Scott Calvin, struggling. Back in like 1993, 1994, because like, if you're thinking about it logically, maybe timeline-wise, Charlie was born in 1985, 1986. 1986 would make sense. Because if you put on the suit in 1993, that would make Charlie 7 going on 8. And it kind of makes sense how, like, that time would be 1994 would be exactly Charlie would be 8 years old, which would make sense why that age where he's like a lot of 8-year-olds, believe in Santa, would start to be would be a thing, which means Charlie was at least 14, 15 when, like, 15 or 16 when the events of the Santa Clauses 2 came out, which makes it which would be that 8-year gap, and would make sense why why Scott Calvin Santa Claus is the MCU Santa Claus, because of Great Depression, Miracle on 34th Street, Elf Santa, choosing Scott Calvin as his successor of Santa Claus, which means with Scott Calvin's run, the timeline, the two opposing timelines of the Fox X-Men MCU and the main MCU timeline that we've been following since Iron Man 1 back in 2008 makes sense, and would make sense why Scott Calvin's Claus, the Scott Calvin Santa Claus family, was unaffected, except for Charlie, because when everybody else got dusted, when Thanos snapped in 8 years, like in 2018, Charlie probably got dusted, or got snapped, or blipped, whatever. And that's why we haven't seen much of that's why we saw Charlie once within the Santa Clauses. And there's a lot of things we need to address. And that's why we need more seasons of the Santa Clauses to address the time gaps within a major time gap within the first two Santa Clauses. See what happened with Charlie's character arc, and why we've only been seeing less and less of him within the franchise. And we need to pick up what happened with Lucy, and the other members of the Calvin Claus family, like the ex-wife and the ex-wife's husband, Neil. What happened to Neil and what was going on? What's going on with Neil and Scott Calvin's ex-wife? What happened with Lucy's character arc? After the events of Santa Claus 3, the Escape Clause. There's so much ground we need to cover within the Santa Claus's massive plot holes and timeline and gap, and it technically starts we pick up in 2021, and we see things start to change in 2022, where we pick up, or kind of the first half of the Santa Claus's season 1 happen. And then by the end of season 1, it's his 30th year, which would be 2023, and he technically started in 1993. He started being Santa Claus in 1993, which would make sense because Santa Claus came out in 1994. The filming started in, I want to say, 1993, which would have been done through practical effects and, whatnot. So it would make sense, and this would be, we are in 2024 at this point, which is not too far off, not too far off in real life, but still kind of in the future, technically. So he's been at least Santa for at least 31 years, effectively, because he puts on the red coat, right, in 1993, when all these mutants start, when the X-Men start coming back together. And Blade is doing whatever Blade does. Hellboy is doing whatever Hellboy is doing, staying to the shadows and stuff. And there's a lot of things we need to cover and be explained, and get addressed. Like, for example, we need to know what Cal's childhood in the North Pole was like, because he's 18 now. We need to see what raising Cal in the North Pole was like. We need to see how old Sandra is. We need to know when she was born. We also need to figure out, we need to address the big elephant in the room here, and that's Charlie's character arc within the franchise. We need to know why Charlie stopped going on the runs with the Santa runs, or the Santa runs with his father, Scott Calvin, aka Santa Claus. We need to know a precise time when he stopped being Santa. And Cribble Crabble, we need to see when Bernard went on Cribble Crabble and when Curtis went on Cribble Crabble. We need to address the previous Cribble Crabble things and what happened during Curtis's Cribble Crabble and Bernard's Cribble Crabble. And we need to see what happens with Betty and Noel's Cribble Crabble. So, we definitely need a lot more seasons of the Santa Claus is to fill in a lot of the missing plot points and storylines within the Santa Claus franchise or trilogy, and get more of a character arc from Tim Allen's character, Scott Calvin, Mrs. Claus's, the person who plays Mrs. Claus, aka Tim Allen's wife. We need to get a deeper dive in the relationship between Scott Calvin's run as Santa Claus and Charlie, and Buddy, aka Buddy slash Cal Buddy Cal Calvin Claus. Wow, that is a freaking mouthful. And Sandra, and when she was born, and how far apart those two are, because it's a little more clear on the time, the gap between Charlie and Buddy are, but it's not known on how far apart Sandra and Buddy are, if that makes sense. We need to see that, those character arcs be addressed, and their how far apart those two are in relation to each other. So there's a lot of things we need to address. So I think we need about 9 seasons to address to fully address the big picture and everything. Also, the reason why Santa was unaffected by Thanos' snap is because North Pole magic, aka Santa, the magic that surrounds the North Pole and whatnot, does not affect the normal world. Plus, time works differently at the North Pole, so yeah. And that works with anything, When you're dealing with other time zones, time displacement and whatnot, which Santa has the power of time manipulation. He can manipulate time. That's a heck of a awesome superpower. If you can manipulate time, if you possess time manipulation, that's a heck of a freaking badass superpower. Just saying. And Cal and Sandra are mutants. They're mutants who possess who possess North Pole magic and can pretty much do the similar things as Scott Calvin, aka Santa Claus, can do. But they're more mutant-like than anything else, so Scott Calvin's... Oh my god. Buddy in the Young Avengers, or just the Avengers, would be pretty awesome. Just saying. Can you imagine what that would entail? Like, get the person who plays Buddy, aka Cal, to reprise his role as Buddy, aka Cal, in the Young Avengers, and bada boom, bada bing, bada boom, you have your Santa mutant, or Sandra, or both. You know, we need mutants. We need more mutants, and bada bing, bada boom, you have 2 mutants already. You know, it doesn't matter if they're outside the North Pole. They can still use magic, you know. Cal and Sandra can use their North Pole magic in the real world, because there's magic, you know. And Sandra could be the most powerful mutant witch we've ever known. She might top the Scarlet Witch or Wiccan in magical abilities. Just saying. Make the Santa Claus franchise canon to the MCU, and bada bing, bada boom. The MCU is fixed. Just saying. But anyways, that's all I have for you guys so far for right now. Please like, share, subscribe, and have a good day. Thanks. Bye.